You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. I can't believe we're already into February. I hope you all enjoyed the guest host episode from last week with Josh and Tim. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you pop over to the YouTube channel and check that show out. It was a fantastic show about integrity and leading your company with integrity. But this week we are back. I am back from my ski vacation, and we are back with Ben Baker, and we're talking about the power of internal communication in your company. So, Ben, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Adam. It's a pleasure being on the show. We've been looking forward to doing this for a while now. Just give everybody a little idea of who we are. I've been in the communications game for about 25 years now. My goal is to help companies to stop being commodities and start being brands worth loving. And what we do is we look at this strategically. Who are you as a brand? What's your purpose? What's your vision? What do you do? Why do you do it? Who do you do it for? Why do they care? And how do we communicate it effectively? And we help companies build champions inside the company so they can create champions outside the company.
Fantastic. And I love how you mentioned building champions inside the company, right? Because so many times a bitter employee, and I've experienced this, I'm sure everybody's experienced this, going to the grocery store, going to your local chain store that has the 17-year-old that's just absolutely, I don't want to be here. I'm here because my parents made me get a job, right? And, it's always amazing to me how much an employee's experience within a company can impact a customer's experience, even if they don't always directly have customer interaction. And that's really, the big thing of what we're talking about today, the power of internal communication and really building those champions within your business. So to get it started, let's talk about how does that internal communication impact the external world in your business?
Well, let's start with this. Your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. Think about that. Let that sink in, that your brand is only as valuable as your unhappiest employee on their worst day. So that 17-year-old kid or that 39-year-old or the 62-year-old that is sitting there, just miserable, disengaged, unhappy, curmudgeon for whatever shape it is, that engages with your customers. That's the face of your brand. That is what people see. You may have a phenomenal product. You may have a phenomenal customer service team. You may have an amazing sales and marketing team and, be able to get it out there. But if that one person who's coming in and wants to buy that $1 million worth of product, if their first contact is that person that's just unhappy, surly, or miserable, that's the first impression that they have of your company. So that's where we have to think about from a company of why having a strong internal communication is so important for external things. Because if those employees understand the purpose, if they understand the vision, if they feel empowered, if they feel listened to, understood, and valued, a lot of that miserableness tends to go away. It tends not to be the employee so much as it tends to be the ecosystem that they're in. And there's too many companies out there that sit there and go, oh, it's just a bad employee. We just got to get rid of them. Instead of realizing that it may not be the employee. It may be the systems that this employee is being, brought into.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. There's a couple things that stuck out to me, right? First of all, the system that the employee is in, right? Because I commented on this yesterday on a post on LinkedIn, and it was, it's all about, the fact that so many companies have this belief that if I buy my team lunch on Friday and have a relaxed dress code, that's going to fix all my culture problems. That's going to fix everything, and everybody's going to be happy to come into work. And well, really, that's not fixing culture. Those are called perks.
Yeah, and the problem with perks are, it starts off with free beer Friday or pizza or whatever, and then it goes to, oh, well, we'll just do the dry cleaning for people. And then it says, oh, okay, we're going to get Ubers on Friday to pick our employees up and, take them to work. And then it gets into stock options and this, that, the other thing. But none of that solves the problem. None of those things, you're right, they're perks. But the problem is that people start expecting the perks and they start factoring that into their job. And it doesn't matter how good the perks are. If the working environment that they're in, if they're constantly being yelled at their manager, if there's unreal expectations, if they don't feel that there's room for growth, if they don't feel they're being trained, if they don't feel they're being listened to, understood, and valued, it doesn't matter how many perks you throw at these people. They're still going to be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, that one absolutely floors me, that people think that perks are the solution. But I agree with you. It's still broken if you don't fix the inherent root cause behavior, which a lot of times is your leadership and your message.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about those two things a little bit. So first of all, let's talk about messaging, because I think that's kind of the foundation. Leadership can tell the message, but we got to talk about that message first. What are some important things that, as a small business owner, you should be focused on in your messaging down to your employees?
Well, it's not just the messaging, because we can say anything we want to our employees, but if we're not living it, it doesn't matter. And I look at this as, in hiring processes, we hire people because we want entrepreneurial employees. But then again, we have a culture that stifles entrepreneurism. We say that we want forward-thinking, creative people, but we're stuck in our old ways and we're not willing to look at initiative. So it's a matter of not only having those communicative messages that say, we want to empower you, we want you to lead, we want you to think for yourselves, we want you to be creative, but you also have to have the processes in place to be able to do it. You have to be able to train leaders at all levels, all the way, people call them managers, I call them first-tier leaders, because the difference is you manage process and you lead people.
Yep.
And if we take a look at leaders at all levels, if they're not trained on how to inspire, how to communicate, how to be empathic, how to coach, how to train people, and how to be there with their team in the trenches and be able to sit there and say, hey, listen, it's about everybody succeeding, and then I succeed as well. Nothing happens. So the message is important, but the message without the actions attached to it really don't do anything. And that's the trouble with most organizations. They're so focused on the message. They all have these wonderful mission, vision, value statements that talk about the employee as number one, that our people are number one, our culture is this, our customers, are our number one priority. But the truth of the matter is, you put your you put your customers on hold for 30 minutes because you don't have enough staff to pick up the call in a 5 minutes time or 2 minutes time or 1 minute time, to be able to take care of those customer service issues, or you don't fix the problem to begin with, so you don't have people sitting on hold for 30 minutes. So it's important that we have the right messaging. It's important that we talk about what the brand story is, and I can get into that as well. But unless people are living it, and I'm talking from the CEO and the C-suite all the way down on a daily basis and saying, these are our values. This is our culture. This is our purpose. This is our goals. This is our direction. This is what we all need to do together in order to be able to be successful. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think Claire, I'm going to butcher your last name, Winnie. I hope I said that right. Calls out here. There's simple things like genuinely asking if your employee is okay when they're going through a major trauma or a major event in their life. You know,
Absolutely.
it is those simple, small things that make the biggest differences. It's when you stop treating people in your company like a number and start treating them like a person with emotions and feelings and beliefs. So thank you very much for that, Claire. Awesome, awesome comment.
No, I love that, Claire, because it's Simon Sinek said it best in this. I believe it was in his TED Talk, and he talks about the manager versus the leader. And he says the manager notices that an employee was late 5 days in a row, and he goes up to the employee and says, "If you're late one more day, you're fired." The leader goes up to that same employee and says, "I notice you've been late for 5 days in a row. Is everything okay?" And I think we need to change that mindset. We need to get that mental shift. And the problem is, we're not training our leaders at all levels how to do that. The carrot and stick method of leadership no longer applies. And we need to train our leaders better so we can have more effective communication, so we can be better teams, and so we can serve the customer's needs better.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I hate to play the generational game because I think every generation says that the generation before them screwed them up, and it's this big reciprocal cycle. But what I find interesting, and I read this in an article out of Forbes early last year, was that the millennial generation is the first generation of workers that is really transient in their position, meaning 3 to 5 years is a long tenure for a millennial to be in a single position or a single company. And the other thing is they're coming in and holding leadership accountable for the first time, truly accountable for those actions. And it was really interesting to me. And after I read that article, I took some time to ask some people and do some research on it. And it's 100% true as far as I can tell, that accountability is coming from those frontline people to the leadership teams more and more now.
Well, I was talking to some people the other day, millennials, and they're sitting there going, all right, this is a generation that has been in flux since the day they were born. If you take a look from 9/11 to 2008 to 2020, and everything in between, they've gone from crisis to crisis to crisis. And their economic well-being has been tied to crises where the market's gone up, the market's gone down, jobs have shifted, positions have been eliminated. All of a sudden, you were earning six figures, all of a sudden you're unemployed. And that's led to a lot of people sitting there going, okay, why am I working for somebody for 30 years when there's no guarantee that job is going to be there? The other thing is people are sitting there going, this is the fourth economic generation where people are all about knowledge. People want to advance. They want to sit there and say, how do I get better? How do I get to a position where I'm going to know a little bit more? I'm going to learn something different. I'm going to be, engaged. I'm going to be interested. And the problem is most companies today are hiring people for a position. They're not hiring people for, this secretary that we're hiring right out of school could become, an office manager, or could become a vice president, or could become whatever, and be able to put people on tracks. We used to put people on tracks for success and used to train people for that, where today it says, oh, they're not going to, why bother spending the money? Why train them? They're just going to leave. Well, they're going to leave because they're untrained. They're going to leave because they don't see a path to success. They don't see their education being forwarded. And I hate to say this, from both sides of the fence, this is not such a bad thing. Leadership needs to understand and says, look, I've got this person, I've got this job. My company is 10 employees. I need somebody to do this. They're going to do it for as long as I can do it. We're going to get as much as we can out of them. I'm going to train them as best as I can. And then when I can't support them anymore, I should help them go find somewhere else that they can succeed. Because helping people to succeed does a couple different things. One, that person, instead of feeling that they were drummed out of a company, feels that this company helped them. They become advocates for the brand. They, in turn, could find somebody that could be a new employee for this company. And as this company grows, and the employee that they let go and they sent somewhere else for 5 years gains skills that they couldn't within this organization, and that employee could come back at a higher level, 5 years later. Yeah. So it's about looking at employees and sit there going, look, we may have to send them somewhere else to get trained and do something else, but keep in touch with them. This was a great employee. We just couldn't support them at this point in time. Maybe we can support them 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road in a different position. So the mentality needs to shift, and the thought process that people are going to die, with 35 years, within a company, those are rare breeds today. I mean, it does happen. There are still people that go into a company at 18 and leave at 55 or 60, but it doesn't happen often anymore.
Yeah, small businesses especially, right? You live in this glass ceiling world because, if you only have 15 people in your company and you bring in a young kid fresh out of college that is qualified and ambitious, you can only go so high in your company. At a certain point, you're not going to more than likely be able to provide what that person needs to move on, to advance their career. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword in that respect. But understanding and respecting that that's the space that you live in, I think is really important. And I always go back to the it's a little thing that goes. I see it on LinkedIn all the time. It says, it's what happens if we train them and they leave, but the other side is what happens if they stay and we don't, right? And it's really, you're probably doing more damage by keeping people there untrained than giving them the knowledge to excel and exceed.
Well, and the look of it is when you bring somebody in the company and say, look, this is the position that we have. This is what we can train you to do. This is what we'd like to see you do over the next 3 to 5 years. You can have that communication with somebody and just say, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? There might be another position for them. That person may be able to go there, or you may have a sister company, or you may know somebody down the road that can use that person's talent. It's a matter of treating humans like human beings and not just cogs in a wheel. I mean, we're not Henry Ford in 1911 anymore. We're not hiring somebody to just turn a wrench. Guess what? There's machines that can do that. We need to hire people who can think, that can be creative, that can be resilient, that can be adaptive, and can take our companies to that next level. But we have to be able to empower them to do that. And leaders need to sit there and say, do I want to be a generational business that I'm going to sit there and say, you know what? I don't want to work too hard. I built this business. I'm making my $200,000 a year. I don't want to, I don't want to float the boat. I don't want to rock anything. The business is just doing just fine. Or do we want to sit there and say, how can we utilize the skills of the people inside our office to take this $1 million business and turn it into a $5 million business? And people in leadership positions, the CEOs, the owners, the founders, need to decide for themselves, what do they want? What do they really want? Do they want to build something that's sellable? Or do they want to, just rest on their laurels, keep the business the way it is? And there's nothing wrong with that, but realize that when they go to sell it, if they can sell it, it's probably worth 20 cents on the dollar of what you actually think it is. So companies need to take a look at it from both points of view.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We've had Damon Pitsulka on the show a couple of times talking about that, thinking about the beginning for the end before you get to the end, thinking about the end at the beginning. But that is something that you really have to keep in mind. Is he pointed out to me the value of the business a lot of times comes down to if the owner is the sole person that makes that business turn, then as soon as you remove that owner, you no longer really have a viable product, and that can affect that value of that business. And so, training and engaging your employees to become those pieces so you don't have to work so hard, first of all. And second of all, so that when you're ready to exit the business, you can set yourself up to keep moving forward, I think is really, really critical.
Yeah. I mean, those employees can either become a buying group to buy your company, or if they're happy and they're engaged and they're, creative and they're doing great things for the company, somebody comes along and says, yeah, this company's worth something. Great. Okay. I'll pay 2x for it. I'll pay 3x for it, because I know I've got 15 employees that are just rocking it, and they're creative and they're coming up, they're being innovative, and we're doing amazing things. And I can just sit there and say, okay, fine. You guys just keep going. I'll just support you. So it's a matter of when you're looking at companies and you're looking at where are you looking to go as a company? What is important to you? And be able to not only hire and onboard and communicate, effectively, but also empower, train, and lead people with your particular goals in mind.
I love that you bring up empower, and you've said it probably a half a dozen times tonight so far. It's one of my favorite words in leadership. But so often we train people and we stick them right back into what they were doing and never empower them to use that knowledge and that new gained skill to its fullest. And I think that's really, really critical, a really critical misstep a lot of times in employee development and employee engagement. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, empowerment's huge. I mean, the story I always tell when I train people is about empowerment comes from Zappos. And this guy phones up the customer service department. He says, what do I do? And the guy says, how can I help you? He says, my wife died 2 days ago, and today 15 pairs of shoes showed up on my doorstep. His wife had a heart attack and died. And, she had ordered 15 pairs of shoes, and he's sitting there with all these boxes of, shoes that obviously aren't going to fit him. And he's sitting there going, what do I do with all this? And the employee said, just a second. First of all, here's the return order. No problem. We'll return your money. Simple as that. Just put this note on the boxes. Just leave them in the box. The UPS will come and pick them up. It's taken care of. And he could have just left it at that. But the guy went and found out this guy's address, called up a florist, and sent a bouquet of flowers from Zappos to this person, with their condolences. He didn't ask anybody to do it. He didn't ask permission, didn't make sure it was okay with the manager, didn't think it was anything. It was just the right thing to do. And that's Zappos empowering their people. Sitting there going, you know what? You have discretion within a certain range to be able to make things right for a customer. And I'm sure that person has told that story 10,000 times. And I've told that story maybe 100 times. And other people have. And what it does is it makes the brand stronger. And the employees, by telling that story to each other, realize that it's the little things that embrace, the human element to the brand and makes people loyal to the brand. And if you allow your employees to think for themselves and not to have to sit there, hang on, let me put you on hold. Let me check with 3 different levels of, management if we can even return this stuff. You just make it easy for the customer. You just make it simple. And that comes from employees knowing, you know what? This is what the company is all about. This is our purpose. This is our mission. This is our vision. This is what we do to make things right for our customers. I know this. Now I'm empowered and I have authority to be able to work within these parameters to make things right for my customers. And that's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. We're going to take this moment. We're going to pause for just a moment and thank our affiliate sponsor, Cowork Hub Virtual. They are providing consultants, coaches, freelancers, solopreneurs a sense of place in a remote work world. It is a totally virtual co-working space where you can actually join the community and see who else is on the platform, actually go jump into their office, have a quick conversation. It is reimagining the water cooler chat for the virtual world. Super cool platform. Go check them out at coworkhubvirtual.com. From there is a form where you can go ahead and request more information, and they'll reach out to you and get a tour set up so you can see the amazing power of the platform. So we thank them so much for supporting our show, and we will jump back into it. I absolutely love employee empowerment because I think we hire smart people, right? And you hear this all the time. Hire smart people, right? And if you don't empower them, you put them in this little box where they can't use all those smarts that you hired them for. And Hilton does a great job with this as well. Where they empower all of their customer service employees. Anybody that is a customer-facing employee has the ability to make a decision up to, I don't remember what the dollar amount is, but there's a dollar amount that they are allowed to use to resolve a customer complaint. And and they don't have to ask anybody. They don't have to ask any questions about it. They just have to identify what the issue was and resolve it. And people look at Hilton as a premium hotel brand, and that's one of the things that sets them apart in that space.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to travel. I used to be on a plane 200 days a year, and we were a Hilton partner because of particularly that. You show up, there's warm cookies there for you. They greet you by name. They always upgraded you to the nice suites. They took care of you. They always made things right. And it was a wonderful thing. And another company that does that, is the Magical Moments at Disney. I mean, talk about a company that is absolutely and completely focused on customer experience. And there's a whole institute called the Disney Way, where people are learned how to treat, guests. And they're not customers, they're guests. And, Amazon says that as well. They are guests. And when we treat people as guests within our platform, within our community, within our company, you're treating them special. And we need to go back to treating people, as if they're special, because they are trading their hard-earned dollars for the experience that you provide them. And they can go anywhere. You can go to Hilton. You could go, to name 100 different hotels. But the thing is, you keep going back to Hilton because you know that you're going to be treated well.
Yep, 100%. And I think it's really important because we've changed the narrative a little bit from where we started, because now we've gone from being really employee focused. Now we're talking a lot about the customer piece of it, but it all ties together.
It does.
Because if you don't take all those pieces that we started talking about and apply them down the path here, your customer interaction piece becomes really, really broken at a certain point. So I absolutely love where this conversation is kind of going, because it's a very it's a path that I don't think a lot of times we think about. You hear people always, people in retail training specifically, I see this all the time, customer first, customer first, customer first. No, employee first, employee first, employee first is the way I always step back. Let's take care of you, and you can take care of everybody else.
Well, exactly. And if your employees understand, if you have effective internal communication, if you let everybody know, where did we come from? Where are we today? What are the challenges and successes that got us there? Who do we serve? Why do we serve them? What makes us special? What makes these people special to us? How do we make their lives better? And where are we going? And we can take all that and bundle that into a story, because that story can be perpetuated amongst all the employees. Because the problem with a mission, vision, values statement that's sitting up on a wall is nobody remembers it. Nobody lives it, and nobody, follows it on a day-to-day basis. But if you have a story that every single employee knows, they internalize it, they recall it, and they retell it in their own words. Now, you might tell it differently than I do, that somebody else does. However, the basic tenets of that story are perpetuated. And when you do that, everybody in the company knows where you are, where you came from, where you're going, why the employee matters, why the customer matters, and this is why we do what we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the mission, vision, values, right? Because that's like, it's a business 101, right? As you're putting your business and your brand together, it's come up with your mission, vision, values, right? And that's important stuff from an overall direction. But I at one point worked in a call center, and I remember every time we had a guest come in, the operations manager would walk around to all the team leaders and all the senior leadership on the site and go, okay, what's the mission, vision, values? What does it mean? What is in like, it was so rehearsed because it wasn't really being lived. You could see it in the culture as well. You could see it in the culture of the entire site because, nobody truly lived what those mission, vision, values were because they didn't truly understand how they played into their roles.
Well, they need to understand, how does the purpose affect them? How does the purpose of the company mesh with my personal purpose? And how does what I individually do matter when it comes to the company's success? And does the person who's leading me let me know that what I'm doing matters, it's valued, and it's and I feel listened to and understood. So it comes down to that circle of communication. It comes down to, what you say and what you do has to be congruent. As an organization, you can put all the flowery words on a wall, whatever you want. You can make all the grandiose statements as you want. But if that same statements are not being lived as part of the purpose of the organization, from the person who sweeps the floors all the way up to the CEO and everybody in between, you know what? It doesn't matter. They're just words, and they have very little to do with what the company truly is.
Yeah, you mentioned that the personal and the company need to mesh, and I think that's really important. I always talk about this in goal setting. In goal setting, we have our company goals, which is usually dollar, revenue, profits, the traditional company goals, right? And then we have the people goals. The frontline people could care less if the company makes 15% more in profits this year, unless they're going to see a piece of that pie.
That's right.
And so, so you have to find ways as a leader to kind of combine those, bring them together and go, how can your personal goals help our company goals? And I think great leaders, definitely empower teams when they do that.
Yeah, and I think the senior leaders need to get beyond, and don't get me wrong, financial goals are important. Financial goals are extremely important, but there also has to be human goals involved in the KPIs. The key performance indicators of the company can't all just be about profit. I'm a big believer of people plus purpose equals profit. If we focus on our people and we understand our purpose and we live it, the profits come. So the key performance indicators of a company not only focus on the profit and loss statement, but also the profit loss on a human factor. How many people quit this year? How many people got sick this year? How many people had heart attacks within our company this year because we didn't really care about them and we worked them too hard? There's so many different things. How many people are out on stress leave? How many people are sitting there with depression? There's all the different factors that go into a company based on the human beings that are part of it that need to be factored into whether the company's successful or not. And it can't just be about dollars and cents.
I agree 100%. With that, we are getting to the end of the show. I always like to wrap up the show with a final thought, of something that people can take away from this show and really apply to their business as they move forward. So I leave the floor to you. What are your final thoughts for today?
I think the final thought is that every company needs to talk to the people on a one-to-one basis as teams, as an organization. We need to listen to people. We need to understand them. We need to value them. We need to understand that the people are our biggest asset. And the more these people are happy, the stronger our brands truly will be.
Absolutely fantastic. Couldn't agree more on that. Before we wrap up, where can people find you?
Probably the best way for people to find me, they can get free chapters of my book, listen to my podcast, see all my training. Everything that's involved is at yourbrandmarketing.com. Everything is in one place at yourbrandmarketing.com.
Fantastic. And always, you can find him on LinkedIn as well. Just search Ben Baker. He shows up. He posts all kinds of amazing content on there as well. So really appreciate you having you on the show this week. Awesome nuggets of information. I really appreciate your time. And we appreciate everybody that joined us in the comment section and joined us for the conversation today. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a wonderful day.
Well, that wraps up yet another episode of the Winning Tactics Podcast. You can find Adam on both the LinkedIn and Facebook platforms. And to support the show and ensure the success of the podcast, would you kindly consider visiting Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus? We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, from the Winning Tactics Podcast, remember, culture is how your team behaves when no one is looking. Take good care, and thanks for listening.